CBSE Board, Class 11, History, Chapter 2, Part 39, Audio by Renee Matthew. So diverting, when the focus is not on the campaigns, what happens is this is a time for the opponents, the enemies, to actually attack Mongols. On the other hand, we can see that, do you remember the Jochis and the Oghide group, the descendants of Genghis Khan? Okay, those people, they already had a rivalry with the Toluid descendants. Do you remember that? They were already fighting. So because of the fight between these two descendants along the Russian-Iranian frontier, they were already fighting. The descendants were already in fight, especially in the Russian-Iranian frontiers. It diverted the Jochids away from further European campaigns. So you can see that there was a lot of distraction that they faced. And the Jochids turned their expansion, they turned their attention to some other place, that too away from European campaigns. Now they were not interested in Europe. So no focus was there now. Mongol expansion in the west suspended. Why? Because the Toluids were defeated. Okay. But that did not stop their campaigns in China, because they were constantly interested in China. It did not stop their campaign in China. And that was again reunited under the Mongols, though they were defeated in the western province. So as a paradox, as a contradiction, we can say that at the moment of its greatest success, there was a lot of internal turbulence between the members of the ruling family. They had a lot of success, but still the internal family was not very happy. They were fighting internally. Toluids, Jochis, Oghide, all these people. So next part of the chapter discusses about the factors that led some of the greatest successes of the Mongol political enterprise. What happened, or how did they actually succeed in spite of all these small tensions? We need to go into the detail of social, political and military organization. Okay, how and why the world history is telling that their military organization was really meticulous and was really arranged well. Among the Mongols, we saw that there were a lot of nomadic societies. Even able-bodied adult males were there. They also had arms. They had ammunition. And most of these adult males constituted the armed forces. Whenever there was an occasion for war, the armed people, they were a part of the forces. They came forward. The Mongol tribes unified. They started coming together, and the remaining subsequent campaigns, the campaigns which followed because of this against diverse people, introduced more people into the Genghis Khan army, because more people wanted to join, and everybody was uniting themselves against a common enemy. And that made things very complicated. And undifferentiated body into an incredibly heterogeneous mass of people. So as more people from diverse culture joined the Genghis Khan army, things were becoming more complex. Heterogeneous mass of people were there. Composition was very high. The army itself was like, it was an attraction during that time. It was a trend to join the army. If you're able-bodied, you can join the army. It was something like that. And what did the army comprise of? It included groups like Turkic Uyghurs. So these people willingly accepted the authority of Genghis Khan, though they were Turks. It also included defeated people. As they defeat people from other parts of the places, what do you think they will do? They will ask them to join the army. Like the Karaids. Do you remember that they were defeated? They were forced to join the army. They were accommodated. They were given all the provisions in Mongol Empire. And they were made part of the confederacy despite their earlier hostility. So now after they joined the army, they were not hostile to Karaids. They united. They were together. So the purpose of annexation, the purpose of conquering, was to make them a part of the Mongol Empire and give them all the accommodation. That is pretty good, right? So Genghis Khan had a systematic style of working to erase all the old tribal identities. He did not want any trace of tribal identity of the different groups who joined his confederacy. All these people, they had their lineage, they had their own culture, right? For example, the Turks had their own culture, Karaids had their own culture, but he did not want any kind of tribal trace to be a part of their identity, especially when they joined his confederacy. And he organized his army according to the old steppe system of decimal units. What is that? Very important part in this particular session. What is a steppe system of decimal units according to which Genghis Khan arranged his military troop, dividing it into tens, hundreds and thousands. So we can say that 10,000 soldiers were there in every unit. In the old system, the clan and the tribe would have coexisted within the decimal units. It was a coexistence which was actually happening in the olden parts of the steppe clan. Now it is like division is there. It was divided more divisions were there. So Genghis Khan stopped this practice where the tribe and the clan coexisted. No more coexisting kind of strategy. What he did was he divided the old tribal groupings and distributed their members into new military units. He said that the clan and the military troop should be different. It is not that the clan can be army, the army can be clan. It shouldn't be like that. There should be a great kind of, you can say, division between the military unit and the members. Of course, tribal people can also be a part of the member, but once you join the military unit, it is different. The lifestyle is different. So like that, the distribution was done where everybody was accommodated according to this particular system. So groups were allotted. They cannot coexist and start moving from one system to another. Earlier, that is the meaning of this particular sentence. The clan and the tribe coexisted. Now it is not like that. They were allotted the group. So without the permission of Genghis Khan, if they tried to move from the allotted group, they had to face severe punishment, harsh punishment. So they had to adhere to the rules and abide by the rules given by the military commanders. The largest unit of soldiers were, it actually held around 10,000 soldiers, not more than that. It was known as Tuman. It now included fragmented groups of people, and that too from different tribes and clans. Okay, so when there was a heterogeneous mixture, when there was a great mix of people, it actually helped Genghis Khan. This actually altered the old steppe social order, where integration was happening of different lineages and clans. And because of that, what happened? It gave them a new identity. And that was just because of their progenitor, Genghis Khan. When new identity was there, they will definitely form it under, they will have that patriotic feeling, they will have that military feeling towards Mongol Empire, right? So that was developed. So the new military contingents were required to serve under his 4 sons. His 4 sons were the military commanders of these people. So it was divided, I told you earlier, it was like they coexisted with the tribal clans. It was not like that. He did not want any tribal traces in the military side. Do you remember that particular point? That is why he wanted people who were trained exclusively for military army to be divided into 10,000s and hundreds and thousands like that. So they were under his 4 sons, and they were specially chosen. They chose captains. The sons chose captains of his army units called Noyan. So sons were there, captains were there. Also, another important point is that within the new realm, there were a band of followers, and they were really loyal to Genghis Khan. In spite of great adversity for many years, in spite of hardships, even Genghis Khan was a ruler who was really loyal to the people who followed him. He gave them all type of comfort and accommodation. So everybody was loyal to him. So he was also taking great interest in honoring some of the individuals like that as his blood brothers. He honored them as his blood brothers. There were people of a humbler rank known as free men. They were also given special ranking as his bondsmen, Nokar. It was to actually show that there was a close relationship with their master. Freemen and blood brothers. Very important point. So this kind of ranking did not preserve the rights of the old clan chieftain. Suppose you were a chieftain in the old system, it did not give you any rights. You have to actually abide by the rules of the new system. Did you understand? Even if a chief from an old clan was made a free man or a blood brother, he did not have, or he could not preserve the rights of the old clan chieftain. So there was a new style of right which was given, the new style of aristocracy. That derived its status, that derived its bond because of a close relationship with Great Khan of the Mongols. It was only because of that, the close relationship. There was a new hierarchy which was followed. Now, just now we saw what was the new hierarchy. Genghis Khan assigned all the responsibility of governing to the newly conquered people and to his 4 sons. So look at the task and responsibility that is given to the newly conquered people. They were also a part of the military group, right? The newly conquered people and the sons. Now they comprised of the 4 ulus. It is a term that did not originally mean fixed territories. The concept of fixed territories was not there. There were rapid conquest and expansion happening, so he did not like fixed territories. So the division of the newly conquered people was known as 4 ulus. The other terms are very important: blood brothers, free men, noyan, all these things. That is like part of military groups. This is the group of newly conquered people. And in his lifetime, Genghis Khan's lifetime was rapidly filled with a lot of conquest. And the frontiers were extremely fluid, because some will go from here to there, from there to here. Expansion is always happening, right? So we can't say that fixed territory was there. Maybe it was difficult for them to even draw the map, right? For example, the eldest son of Genghis Khan, his name was Jochi. He received the Russian steppes, but the farthest extent of his territory, ulus, was indeterminate. He couldn't expand beyond that. He received Russian steppes. He was not sure whether he's going to get the farthest extent of his territory. It extended as far west as his horses could roam, but beyond that, it was indeterminate. The second son was Chagatai. He was given the Transoxianian steppe and lands north of the Pamir mountains, adjacent to that of his brother Jochi. So everything started shifting. Presumably we can say that these lands would shift as Jochi marched westward. So if he decided to move westward, everything will shift. So nothing was fixed actually. Anybody could annex and take over the land anytime. Genghis Khan had a notion about his 3rd son. Who was his 3rd son? Ogidi. So he always felt that Ogidi will succeed him as the great Khan. And he always had a assurance that this prince Ogidi would establish his capital at Karakoram. That was a dream of Genghis Khan, to give everything to his 3rd son Ogidi. And he had all the skills also. One more son was there, Toloi. Toloi received the ancestral lands of Mongolia. So he always had a vision that his sons would rule his land properly, the empire collectively. He always felt that they all will stand together and rule the empire collectively. And to underline this point, military contingents of the individual princes were placed in each ulus. So they had further divisions known as ulus. The conquered part, do you remember the conquered country part? So like that he did all this segregation. He divided and gave everything to his sons. Everything was done meticulously and in a very planned and strategic manner. But what happened to the people? They had a sense of dominion. The sense of dominion was shared by the members of the family. And it was also as the assembly of chieftains. There was a group of people who ruled, right? The assembly of chieftains were known as Kurultai, where all decisions relating to the family or the state for the forthcoming season was taken. So they always discussed with this group of chieftains known as Kurultais whatever is going to happen in the future, especially campaigns, distribution of plunder, pasture land, succession. Everything was collectively taken. They all discussed and did it very well. So, Genghis Khan gave an example to his son to fashion a rapid courier system where he connected the distant areas of his regime. He had a very powerful way of connecting the distant places also. Fresh mounts and dispatch riders were placed in outposts. He actually asked the riders and mount and all these people to be kept in the outer sections of the society of the empire at regular spaced distances, so that they can keep a check on the enemy on when they are going to enter Mongol Empire. So that was the way he did it. dispatch riders and fresh mounts, all these freshly done people, everybody was put at the outskirts. Then slowly, they, according to their skills only, they were given the duty. So for maintaining this kind of communication system with a distant land, Mongol nomads contributed a tenth of their herd. They were asked to contribute a tenth of their herd, either horses or livestock, as provisions. So it was like a collective contribution which was done even by the nomads to give a part of their livestock, especially horses or livestock. And this is known as the Kubkur task, a levy that the nomads paid willingly for the multiple benefits that it brought. So it is not that they had to force for the Kubkur task. Willingly, the nomads were very happy to give the horses and livestock so that their Mongol empire could expand. There was no space for jealousy. So this was the courier system, the communication system, and it was known as Yam. And that further refined after Genghis Khan's death.